The system isn't malfunctioning. It's performing exactly as designed. When exhaustion floods your body, when your vision blurs from staring at screens, when your soul feels like cracked porcelain, and yet your bank account mirrors what it looked like 3 years prior. Understand this. You aren't witnessing a malfunction. You're experiencing a fundamental principle. This principle operates with such mathematical precision, with such architectural coldness, that 99% of humanity will live their entire existence without perceiving its machinery. They accept the narrative, the soothing fiction that has been programmed into your neural pathways since your first day in an institutional classroom. This fiction whispers that diligence equals prosperity, that moral behavior guarantees protection, that obedience to established protocols means the architecture will shield you from catastrophe. Observe your surroundings with fresh eyes. Notice the exhausted expressions on public transportation. Study the intellectually gifted individuals drowning in financial obligations. Examine the people who executed every prescribed action flawlessly, yet remain one medical emergency away from financial collapse. Does this architecture appear to reward ethical behavior? Does capital seem to track perspiration? The answer is unambiguous. Capital does not pursue exertion. It ignores virtue. It bypasses talent entirely. Capital pursues structural placement. This represents the Machiavellian principle of strategic positioning. It explains why accumulated wealth concentrates while you accumulate fatigue. The wealthy do not outwork you. Many invest substantially less physical effort. They don't possess cognitive abilities you fundamentally lack. They simply occupy different coordinates in the architecture of power. They stand at the source. You stand at the drainage point. In any system governed by gravitational principles, no quantity of effort, no intensity of desire, no volume of motivation can reverse the directional flow. Most humans spend their finite existence battling fundamental physics. They cup their palms at the waterfall's base, attempting to capture enough liquid to sustain survival, confused by the violence of the current, wondering why it crushes them with such force. They never redirect their gaze upward. They never observe that someone positioned at the elevation point has constructed a retention structure. That individual isn't cupping anything. They're controlling the entire flow pattern. They aren't struggling against the current. They've positioned themselves so the current generates value on their behalf. If transformation of your financial architecture is your objective, additional discipline is not the missing variable. Waking at 4 in the morning won't solve the equation. Grinding yourself into psychological fragments won't alter the mathematics. You must stop all motion. You must study the topographical map. You must comprehend that you're engaging in warfare from the lowest elevation against an adversary who controls the commanding heights. Today we're dismantling the mythology of merit-based success. We're performing a forensic examination on the worship of labor. We're analyzing reality through the lens of Niccolò Machiavelli, not as someone concerned with morality, but as someone who understood architecture. I'm revealing why you're trapped. Not to inflict psychological damage, but because escaping any prison requires first perceiving the bars. To comprehend your current failure, you must understand the distinction between generation and extraction. This represents the foundational misunderstanding that keeps brilliant minds economically poor. Society conditions you to become a generator. You're trained to construct capabilities, to generate utility, to become functionally valuable. Become the superior engineer. Become the superior communicator. Become the superior medical professional. Become the superior subordinate. We glorify generation. We worship contribution. But economic machinery doesn't reward generation. It rewards extraction. Generation is the process of producing energy. Extension is the process of capturing it. Consider a hydroelectric retention system. The flowing water represents energy. It symbolizes raw capability, physical labor, the movement of populations. Water generates force, but water doesn't receive compensation. The retention structure receives compensation. The structure remains motionless. It possesses immovability. It carries weight. It doesn't labor in the sense that water labors. It simply exists. It occupies a strategic constriction point where water has zero alternative pathways. Through positioning alone, the structure extracts the value generated by the current. You are the current. You represent the force. You're the element rushing forward, moving, eroding your substance against obstacles, generating the energy that illuminates urban centers. But because you don't control the constriction point, you don't extract the value. You merely transit through the system, leaving your energy behind as you pass. This explains why accumulated wealth compounds. The wealthy aren't the current. They're the retention structure. They focus 100% of their energy on acquiring and maintaining strategic positions where value must transit. Once they secure the position, wealth accumulation becomes automatic. It becomes structural. It requires zero new decision-making processes. It requires zero fresh willpower expenditure. This is what Machiavelli meant when discussing the concept of institutional power. The institution survives the individual ruler. A monarch may perish, but if the throne occupies the correct position, the kingdom persists. The power resides in the structural position, not the person occupying it. Place a mediocre individual in a high-leverage position, and wealth generation occurs. Place a genius in a low-leverage position, and wage generation occurs. Examine the architecture of contemporary corporate structures. It's a pyramidal extraction system. At the foundation, you find the technician. The technician possesses execution knowledge. They write computational code. They repair mechanical systems. They perform surgical procedures. They are the generator. Their position is execution-based. Their leverage ratio is 1-to-1. When they stop executing, income ceases. They are the current. Above them sits the coordinator. The coordinator may not possess execution knowledge superior to the technician, but they occupy a coordination position. They leverage the time of 10 technicians. Their leverage ratio is 1-to-10. Above them sits the strategist. The strategist may possess zero execution ability, but they occupy the strategic position. They determine flow direction. Their leverage ratio is 1-to-1,000. Above them all sits the owner, the equity holder, the capital controller. They don't execute. They don't coordinate. They don't even strategize. They own. Their position is equity-based. Their leverage is mathematically infinite. They can be unconscious in a medical facility, and their net worth increases. Why? Because they own the structure that extracts the labor of the strategist, the coordinator, and the technician. Wealth concentration isn't conspiracy. It's mechanical inevitability within this architecture. The output of thousands at the foundation funnels upward, concentrating at the apex. It's an inverted collection system. Gravitational forces work against the masses and favor the few. If this generates anger within you, you're wasting energy. Gravity doesn't respond to emotional reactions. You cannot guilt water into flowing upward. You possess only two options: remain the current and hope for increased volume, or become the retention structure. Machiavelli wrote extensively about two opposing forces: Virtù, meaning capability and strength, and Fortuna, meaning circumstance and positioning. Modern society has convinced you that Virtù represents everything. We tell children to achieve academic marks, master capabilities, become undeniable. We market the fantasy that sufficient skill will bend reality to your will. This is the capability trap. You observe it everywhere. The brilliant creator starving financially. The genius programmer earning below market compensation. The dedicated healthcare worker barely managing rent payments. They possess immense virtù. They have capability. They have character. But Machiavelli whispered the dark truth 5 centuries ago. Virtù without occasione, the occasion or position, is wasted. Talent is meaningless in a vacuum. A master swordsman is useless when the battle is decided by gunpowder. A brilliant speaker is silent when standing in a room with no audience. The wealthy don't obsess over skill. They obsess over the occasion. They obsess over placing themselves on terrain where their smallest actions have massive consequences. They understand that position multiplies skill. Let's examine the mathematics of your existence. Outcome equals skill plus effort multiplied by position. If your position equals 0 or approaches 0, it doesn't matter if your skill and effort equal 100. 100 plus 100 multiplied by 0 equals 0. This is the tragedy of the laboring class. They're maximizing the variables within the parentheses. They're increasing their skill. They're doubling their effort. They're burning out. But they're multiplying it by a structural 0. They're excavating a hole in the middle of an arid region, hoping to find water simply because they're skilled excavators. The wealthy individual finds the spring first. They may be a terrible excavator. They may use a damaged tool. They may work for only 10 minutes. But because their position is correct, because they're standing on the water source, they win. 10 plus 10 multiplied by 1,000 equals 20,000. This drives the moralist insane. It's not fair, they scream. They're lazy. They're stupid. They don't deserve it. But the market isn't a moral arbiter. The market is a mechanism. It doesn't ask who worked harder. It asks where is value being extracted. And here is the most difficult truth to internalize. The system punishes you for your reliance on skill. Why? Because skill is difficult to scale. It's tied to your temporal existence. It's tied to your physical body. If you're the best surgeon globally, you can still only save one patient at a time. Your position is limited by biological constraints. The owner of the hospital, however, doesn't need to perform surgery. They need to position the hospital in a wealthy district, negotiate contracts with insurance companies, and hire you. Their position is scalable. Yours is not. As long as you pride yourself solely on your labor intensity, you're locking yourself into a cage. You're wearing your exhaustion like a badge of honor. I worked 80 hours this week. To the Machiavellian, that's not a boast. That's a confession of strategic failure. It means you required 80 units of energy to achieve a result that someone in a better position achieved with a phone call. It means you're inefficient. It means you're fighting gravity. Stop being proud of your suffering. Suffering is not a currency. The bank does not accept your sweat. Let's go deeper into the psychology that keeps you downstream. Why do most people refuse to move? Why do they cling to low-leverage positions, even when they see the mathematics? Because the bottom is crowded, and crowds feel safe. There is a psychological comfort in being part of the struggle. When you are a worker, you have camaraderie. You have a shared enemy, the boss, the system, the government. You have a script. You know what you are supposed to do. Show up, do the work, go home, complain. Moving upstream requires you to step into the void. To change your position, you must leave the herd. You must step away from the comforting narrative of fairness. You must accept that the world is cold, architectural, and indifferent. Most people would rather be poor and morally superior than wealthy and structurally responsible. They love the narrative of the underdog. We love stories where the scrappy poor kid beats the rich system through heart and grit. We love it because it validates our delusion. It tells us that our position doesn't matter. Only our spirit does. But in the real world, the underdog usually loses. In the real world, Goliath squashes David 99 times out of 100, because Goliath has reach, armor, and mass. The rich do not play the underdog. They play the house. They understand that wealth is not a battle. It is a siege. You do not run out and fight. You build walls. You control the supply lines. You wait. This requires a fundamental shift in how you view yourself. You must stop viewing yourself as a worker and start viewing yourself as an asset allocator. Even if you have no money, you have time, you have attention, you have energy. These are your assets. Most people allocate these assets into labor. They sell them wholesale. The outlier allocates them into leverage. They spend their time building things that work for them. They spend their energy securing relationships, which are just access to other people's positions. They spend their attention finding the cracks in the system where value is leaking, so they can place a bucket underneath. This is the concept of strategic laziness. Bill Gates did not write every line of code for Windows. He positioned himself between IBM and the operating system. He captured the license. He owned the toll booth. Rockefeller did not drill all the oil. He bought the refineries. He realized that the drillers were the risk-takers, the gamblers. They could hit a dry well and go broke. But if they struck oil, they had to refine it. He positioned himself at the bottleneck. He controlled the flow. This is the secret. Find the bottleneck. In every industry, in every market, in every career path, there is a bottleneck. There is a specific point where the flow of value is constricted. In the gold rush, the bottleneck was not the gold. It was the shovels. In the internet age, the bottleneck was not the content. It was the search engine, Google. In the influencer economy, the bottleneck is not the talent. It is the algorithm. Attention. If you are the content creator, you are the water. If you are the platform, you are the dam. Ask yourself right now, where do I stand in relation to the bottleneck of my industry? Am I the one trying to squeeze through the hole, or am I the one standing at the gate charging a toll? If you are trying to squeeze through, you will always be tired. You will always be competing because everyone is trying to squeeze through. The law of position states, competition is for those who cannot build a monopoly, and monopolies are born from position. So why haven't you moved? It is not just because you didn't know. It is because the system has placed 3 invisible tripwires to keep you stationary. These are the psychological traps that ensure the rich get richer and the poor stay busy. 1. The sunk cost of identity. You have spent years building an identity around your suffering. You call yourself a grinder. You pride yourself on your endurance. To move positions, you have to kill that version of yourself. You have to admit that your hard work was, in many ways, a mistake, a misallocation of energy. The ego hates this. The ego would rather be right and poor than wrong and rich. You cling to your degree because you spent 4 years getting it, even if the degree is leading you to a dead-end position. You cling to your industry because it's what I know, even if the industry is dying. The rich have no loyalty to their past. They have loyalty only to the future. If a position is no longer advantageous, they abandon it. They are fluid. They are mercenaries of value. 2. The salary addiction. A salary is the most effective drug ever created. It is a bribe. The system pays you just enough to kill your ambition, but not enough to buy your freedom. It provides a steady, predictable drip of dopamine. 2 weeks, paycheck. 2 weeks, paycheck. This rhythm hypnotizes you. It makes you fear the irregularity of ownership. Wealth is lumpy. It does not come in smooth, bi-weekly increments. It comes in droughts, and then it comes in floods. To change positions, you must be willing to endure the drought to build the dam for the flood. But the salary addict cannot handle the withdrawal. They need the hit. So they stay in the position of the employee, trading their infinite potential for a finite drip. 3. The illusion of risk. You are told that moving upstream is risky. Starting a business is risky. Investing is risky. Negotiating for equity is risky. So you stay in the safe position. But look at the reality. Who is more at risk? The person who owns the stream or the person who drinks from it? If the stream dries up, the owner moves to a new stream. They have the map. They understand the terrain. The drinker dies of thirst. Employment is the riskiest position of all, because you have a single point of failure. One boss, one company, one industry. If that connection is severed, you have zero leverage. The rich get richer because they are diversified. They occupy multiple positions. They have multiple dams on multiple rivers. They have redefined safety, not as stability, but as control. You think safety is a steady paycheck. They know safety is owning the checkbook. So how do we begin the migration? How do we move from the downstream struggle to the upstream capture? We must stop thinking in terms of career ladders. Ladders are for climbing. We are not climbing. We are traversing. We are moving laterally from high-effort, low-leverage zones to low-effort, high-leverage zones. This requires a new map, a map of the hierarchy of leverage. Most people think the hierarchy is intern, junior, senior, manager, vice president, chief executive. That is the hierarchy of the farm. It is just different levels of livestock. The vice president is just a cow with a shinier bell than the intern. They are still on the farm. They are still being milked for their time. The real hierarchy, the hierarchy of wealth, is invisible to the corporate ladder. Level 1. The laborer, the time seller. You sell time. You have zero leverage. You are paid only when you bleed. Level 2. The merchant, the transaction maker. You sell products or outcomes. You have slight leverage. You can sell while you sleep, but you still have to source, ship, and service. Level 3. The architect, the system owner. You own the code, the media, the patent, or the process. The product replicates itself. Your leverage is detached from your marginal cost. Level 4. The capitalist, the resource allocator. You move money to where it breeds. You do not touch the product. You do not touch the customer. You touch the structure. The goal of your life must be to migrate up this hierarchy. And here is the brutal truth. You cannot work your way from level 1 to level 4. You cannot labor so hard that you become a capitalist. You have to jump. You have to change the nature of your income, not the amount. A doctor earning $500,000 a year at level 1 is still poorer than a software owner earning $100,000 a year at level 3. Why? Because the doctor is trapped. Their income is a golden handcuff. They have to keep cutting to keep eating. The software owner is free. Their income is a seed. They have time to think, to plan, to move to level 4. The rich get richer because they play the game of time. They buy back their time immediately. They use their first wealth to purchase their freedom. And then they use their freedom to purchase more wealth. You use your wealth to purchase comfort. You buy a better car to drive to the job that enslaves you. You buy a bigger house to sleep in between shifts at the factory of your soul. You are using your money to make your cage more comfortable. They are using their money to buy the key. This is the fundamental difference in position, the consumer versus the owner. How do you move from the bottom of the pyramid to the top? How do you shift from the one who pushes the boulder to the one who owns the mountain? You do not ask for permission. You do not wait for a promotion. Promotions are the crumbs the system feeds you to keep you from baking your own bread. You must utilize the vacuum strategy. Machiavelli understood that power is not given, it is filled. Power flows like water into empty spaces. If you want to capture value, you must find a void in the system, a problem that is burning, a need that is screaming, a question that has no answer. And you must position yourself as the only thing that fills that void. Most people try to compete in crowded spaces. They see everyone starting a podcast, so they start a podcast. They see everyone learning coding, so they learn coding. They are mimicking. They are adding noise to noise. The rich do the opposite. They look for the silence. They ask, what is the one thing that the powerful people in this industry are terrified of? What is the bottleneck that is costing them millions? When you identify that void, you do not politely offer to help. You position yourself in the center of it. If a company is bleeding because they cannot retain clients, you do not apply for a job in customer success. You build a system that automates retention, and you sell the result, not your time. You become the cork in the hole of the sinking ship. When you are the cork, you dictate the price. The captain does not negotiate with the cork. They pay whatever it costs to stop the drowning. This is the essence of position. It is about leverage through necessity. If you are nice to have, you are poor. If you are necessary for survival, you are rich. Look at your current role. If you disappeared tomorrow, would the organization collapse, or would they just be annoyed for 2 weeks while they hired a replacement? If you are replaceable, your position is weak. And because your position is weak, your income will always be capped by the market rate of your replacement. To get rich, you must become a structural necessity. You must wrap your hands around the cables that keep the lights on. You must own the relationship, the data, the process, or the access that no one else has. Create a vacuum that only you can fill. And then wait. Let the panic of the market drive the value to you. If you cannot own the asset, if you cannot build the dam yet, then you must execute the gatekeeper protocol. This is the fastest way for the have-nots to become the haves. In every system, there are 2 types of power players, the owners and the gatekeepers. The owner holds the gold. The gatekeeper holds the key to the vault. You may not have the capital to be the owner yet, but you can position yourself as the gatekeeper. You can become the bridge between the problem and the solution. Real estate agents are gatekeepers. Investment bankers are gatekeepers. Talent agents are gatekeepers. They produce nothing. They create nothing. They simply stand between the buyer and the seller and demand a toll for passing through. This offends the purist. The purist says they are parasites. They add no value. The Machiavellian laughs. They know that access is value. In a world of noise, the person who curates access is king. If you know the 3 people that a billionaire needs to meet, you are effectively a billionaire by proximity. If you control the newsletter that 10,000 buyers read, you control the sales of every product in that niche. You do not need to build the product. You just need to own the audience. Stop trying to be the genius inventor. Be the person who introduces the inventor to the investor. Be the person who connects the audience to the offer. Position yourself at the intersection. Picture a busy intersection in a city. You don't need to build the cars. You don't need to pave the roads. You just need to be the person who puts up the billboard. The traffic is already there. The energy is already flowing. You're just capturing a slice of it by standing in the right place. This requires you to shift your focus from how do I work harder to who do I know and where is the attention flowing. Attention is the oil of the 21st century. Whoever controls the flow of attention controls the flow of money. If you are writing code in a basement, you are labor. If you are deciding which code gets featured on the App Store, you are a gatekeeper. Always seek the gate. The final barrier you must break is your understanding of risk. The poor are terrified of losing what little they have. The rich are terrified of missing out on what they could have. This difference in psychology creates a difference in position. The poor cling to the shoreline. They view the ocean as a threat. What if a storm comes? What if I drown? So they stay on the sand, fighting for scraps. The rich build the ship. They view the ocean as a highway. To change your position, you must invert your relationship with risk. You must realize that staying still is the most dangerous move on the board. In a rapidly changing economy, the safe job is a ticking time bomb. Automation, artificial intelligence, and globalization are eroding the bottom of the pyramid. The water is rising. If you stay downstream, you will drown. The only safety is in elevation. You must be willing to risk your current comfort to purchase your future leverage. This might mean quitting the job that pays you well, but teaches you nothing. It might mean investing your savings into a business instead of a car. It might mean looking like a fool for 2 years while you build something that doesn't pay you yet. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be impetuous than cautious, for fortune is a woman, and if you wish to keep her under, it is necessary to beat and ill-use her." He meant that the world yields to aggression. It yields to those who move with conviction. The universe hates hesitation. It punishes the timid. If you are waiting for a guarantee, you will wait until you are dead. There are no guarantees in the law of position. There are only probabilities. And the probability of getting rich while trading time for money is 0. The probability of getting rich by owning equity, by controlling leverage, by positioning yourself upstream. It is not 100%. But it is the only game where the math works. You have to place a bet. You have to bet on yourself, not on your ability to work hard. Everyone can do that. You have to bet on your ability to see the map, to spot the high ground, and to take it before someone else does. When you finally shift your position, something strange happens. You stop being tired. The chronic exhaustion that has plagued you for years, the feeling of pushing a car uphill, vanishes. Suddenly, you're driving the car. You are still working, maybe even working long hours. But the friction is gone, because now your effort is compounding. Every hour you work builds a system that will work for you tomorrow. You are no longer renting your life. You are building equity in it. The bitterness dissolves. You stop looking at the rich with envy and start looking at them with understanding. You see the game for what it is. It is not personal. It is just mechanics. You realize that you were never not good enough. You are just standing in the wrong place. It is like finding the light switch in a dark room. You spent years stumbling, bruising your shins, cursing the darkness. You thought you were clumsy. You thought you were blind. But you were just in the dark. Position is the light switch. Flip it. Move from labor to leverage. Move from downstream to upstream. Move from competing to dominating. Machiavelli's final lesson to the prince was this: do not be hated. But in the modern world, the lesson is, do not be ignored. Poverty is the state of being ignored by the market. Wealth is the state of being essential to it. Your task starting today is to audit your life with cold, surgical detachment. Look at your income source. Is it leverageable? Look at your daily tasks. Are you building a dam or carrying water? Look at your industry. Where is the bottleneck? If you cannot answer these questions, you are the prey. The predator knows exactly where they stand. The predator knows the terrain better than the prey. You must become the predator of your own destiny. You must hunt for the high ground, because the water is rising, and only those with position will float. But once you have the position, once you have the money, a new danger emerges. A danger far more subtle and far more destructive than poverty. Most people think getting rich ends the war. They are wrong. Wealth just changes the battlefield. Once you have the crown, everyone wants to take it. The wolves do not stop coming. They just change their clothes. They come as friends. They come as lovers. They come as partners. How do you protect the fortress once you have built it? How do you spot the traitor who is already inside the walls? That is the art of Machiavellian defense, and it is a game of shadows that few survive. We will discuss that next time. If this opened your eyes, understand this is only what I can show publicly. There are videos I cannot upload for everyone. There are aspects of dark psychology that I simply cannot discuss publicly on YouTube without being censored or demonetized. The algorithm suppresses the most powerful information. Those exist behind the join button. If you're still here, you're not like the others. Subscribe if you haven't. But if you want what's hidden, click the join button and step into the architect level. You will unlock exclusive, uncensored videos that dive into the deepest parts of the human psyche. Most won't. That's the point.